Hi, this is Steve Moore coming to you again today talking about opportunities or really the challenges that we're facing from the COVID-19 crisis here in Southern Ohio with small businesses and business owners. What we're hoping to do with this session is talk a little bit about just questions in general. I know some people are providing some questions. We hope to get to those, but I'm here with Bryce Eldridge, and he's got some specific questions that we can start talking about, and we hope that this spurs up ideas and other things that people would be thinking about or opportunities for us to answer as well. Bryce?
Yeah, I appreciate you sitting down, not just with me, but with everyone that this is kind of here for. And, the word you mentioned at the start of this kind of, didn't mean to say is the word opportunity. And it's certainly, the number one thing is that I don't want to take light of the situation.
Absolutely not.
I personally, at this, today, have lost 20% of my recurring revenue. That's going to affects my team. It affects myself, my family, my wife, my daughter. And it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So we're not taking light of what's going on, and I'm not an optimist to the point of ignoring reality.
Right.
But there are two big questions that I have for you that have kind of been things that have come up in conversations that I have. I also have a diverse group of people that I work with.
Yeah.
So I own a marketing agency, and across the board, we're in 10 different industries, and so I'm able to see how certain people are affected. Some of my clients are soaring, and some of them are like me, where they're having different effects. And so the while this is not an opportunity, while this is not a time where we're focused on opportunity in the sense of expanding, for the sake of expanding, this is an opportunity for people to take a step back and look at the things that they can do to keep their business alive or to move it forward. And so my first question is about the subject and the topic of control. And there's kind of two questions that I have here for you. What am I in control of, and what am I not in control of? And I know it's a big question, that's a loaded question, but as someone who works with you as a partner, what do I not and do have control over right now?
And again, good question, and just to echo what you said too, in that, look, nothing is more important than the safety and health of people in the community and our nation. We're spending some time talking about the business aspects of this because it is important. It's not nearly as important as everything else, but we want to focus the time and energy here. So, and you are unique in all your abilities to see the impacts of this as well. So, as far as control, so from my perspective, this has been one of the more challenging economic events. Again, taking the human element out of it that has little to do with control. But what you can control is you can control your planning and your execution. You can control the things that you are wanting to do and the options that you create for yourself. And I think that's where people, small businesses in this area, this is an event where it's easy to throw up the hands, right? And it's easy to say, as we've talked about in some of the dialogue over the last few days, there's nothing about this that is man-made in that sense or anything else. This is circumstances that happen. So it's easy to say, I can't control this, so what can I do about it? Well, what you can do about it is use this as an opportunity to evaluate your business, to plan for scenarios that may or may not exist, and prepare yourself for when those decisions do need to happen. I put a budget together that says I'm going to start on July 1 and I'm only going to have 60% of the revenue that I'm used to seeing. All right, so when I control, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know if there's outcomes that create that scenario, I know in my mind I've already walked through the steps of what that's going to look like for the decisions I'm going to have to make and be faced to make. I think that's the best we can do right now, and we can control those steps. We can.
Well, I like what you're saying about the worst case scenario, and there's a lot of, there's kind of three groups of people. There's somehow a group of people that have been unaffected by it in the sense of it financially. Because when you do think about business, a lot of things come down to your P&L. Are you making money or are you not? And there's a group of people that are good,
Yeah.
and maybe even better than what they were
Grocery
before.
stores, I mean, there again, a lot of people that are providing critical services.
And then there's a second group of people, and I think I fall in this, where I am affected by it, but based off I think I'm going to make it. And,
Right.
and
Right.
making it may look 20 different ways,
Yep.
because every day is a new day and you don't know what's going on. And then there's a third group of people who have lost their business or are going to lose their business, and it's the reality that they face. So I think for me, I've already walked down in my head losing my business.
Yeah.
And so you don't just wake up and lose your business.
Right.
Like we talked about yesterday, there's kind of a progression, right? There's this happens, and then this happens, and this happens. And so how can someone kind of plan out on paper worst case scenario and prepare for that? Maybe it won't happen, maybe it will, but what's the power of that, and how can they do it?
So most people, again, depending on your industry, but most people do regularly scenario modeling. So historically with my businesses, we do three things at a minimum. We do a worst case scenario, a best case scenario, and a most probable scenario. And when I say that, that's primarily driven by your budget, right? You sit down at the beginning of the year and you say, here's the income I'm expecting to get. Here's the staff that I've got. If things go really great, it's going to be here. If things go really bad, it's going to be here. And then you bound that. You say, all right, so here, as our rule of thumb is, if I can live with the worst case scenario, it's probably not going to be a terrible year. But this, we're in unique times, right? So again, I think as a planning tool, you simply need to make assumptions based on where you saw your business coming into this, and then as we've talked about, how much are you impacted by this? And the short answer to your question is, there's no magic formula for this. From my perspective, it is though about planning and about being honest and real about those outcomes. And you knew your business coming in. And I think the challenge for a lot of businesses right now that maybe are looking at this as being really difficult to come out of is, honestly, if you were not doing well coming into this, these are the things that really do create, people going out of business. These are events that not everybody can withstand. So that's the reality for certain people, and those aren't easy decisions.
Well, and I think that's worth noting, because we don't want people to be blind in this situation and pretend that they may not go out of business. My reality is that I could go out of business. And so I'm planning for that and kind of preparing for that. And I think the advice you're giving me now is helpful and good. And so in the process of that, there's another question I have for you, which goes alongside, I think, in my opinion, of going through worst case, best case, and most probable, is transparency. How important is it to be first off, I know it's important to be transparent with myself.
Sure.
I have to be able to be honest with myself. Otherwise, nothing will move forward. But how important is it to be transparent with your staff, your employees, your freelancers, everyone that could be affected? And how do you do that? What's the proper way to communicate during such a sensitive time? Do you let them know that maybe something's going to come and get them kind of spooked? How do you do it?
A good question. And again, so human nature is such that if in the absence of information, human nature is, I'm going to insert the worst case possible. Okay, that's unfortunately the way most of us are wired. Is if I'm not being told how we're doing financially as a business, I'm assuming we're about to go bankrupt. So my approach and my opinion on transparency is, there's very little information in reality that shouldn't be shared with your staff. Obviously individual people's salaries and all kinds of goofy stuff like that, but your plan and your assumptions in what you're doing budget-wise and everything else, I think especially in times like we're in today, provide confidence and reassurance. And it's done from my perspective in that manner of, look, this is reality, right? I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. I'm not trying to say that we're the greatest company in the world. You obviously run a risk if you are conveying to everyone that you're going to have some challenges going ahead, that those people would say, hey, it's time for me to start looking elsewhere and do some other things. But my personal belief in how we especially as Christians or however you want to define yourself. I think you owe that to people, right? I think it's an obligation that you owe people a real and transparent expectation of what they're doing. And I also find in that transparent process, when we were talking about the scenarios and different things like that, you can get some insight from people that you hadn't really thought before. Once you start sharing, it's like, hey, here's what I think is going to happen based on this and this and that. And then all of a sudden you get people saying, well, I didn't know that's what you were assuming, that we can do something different or whatever there. So you find a fair amount of data that can help you in that process too.
Because there are a lot of businesses, like me. I've been in business for about 10 years, and I'm still a small business. So there's a lot kind of on my brain and on my head, and it sounds weird, but it can be easy to overlook important details like that. And obviously, it's such a unique time right now, so I'm way more aware of things than what I ever have been before. But that's been hard for me because I haven't known what's right or wrong to do, and there aren't a lot of friends that I have that maybe I can go to ask that information as well.
Yeah.
And I love what you said. In the absence of information, our minds tend to go to the worst case scenario.
I wish that were different.
But it is human nature, and just to be transparent with people who are giving you their time, giving you their talent and resources, and it couldn't be more relieving to hear you say that, because I haven't been sure kind of what to do and what that scenario is, and so I thank you for that.
I just think in the big scope of that topic, erring on the side of giving more information versus less information, you're the negatives, the positives far outweigh the negatives.
Yeah.
I mean, they really do.
And as we talked through this week on some of the other videos, there's a lot of different conversations about control and what you do and don't have control of. But I do think specifically being able to understand transparency and being able to be honest with the people around you is going to be important as we continue to move forward, because we don't really know what's ahead.
And not to go too far down that path, but in those scenarios, and if you are looking at difficult times and you do know that that's probably going to result in some reductions or whatever, as we're moving through this, we're under some pretty unique circumstances now. But, my experience is, again, being honest with those people, if they are a good employee, but your circumstances are just starting to change now to where it doesn't make sense, they've committed to you, you commit to them to help them help them, give them the good reference, do the things. So again, the earlier in the cycle that you can have the information, the dialogue, everybody ends up being in a better place as a result, and it's just the right thing to do.
And finally, we'd love for you to be more involved. Steve kicked this off in order to provide specifically help for small businesses inside of Southern Ohio. And so if that's you, head over to Facebook and search for the Steve Moore Group. Request to be a part of that private group. We would love to have you. There's a lot of engagement in there from people who are asking questions and providing some of the creative solutions for themselves and sharing it with other people so that we can all take a step forward and move through this situation together.
We look forward to more questions from others as we move forward, and in particular for anybody who wants to reach into our comments section and provide any questions or topics. We'd be happy to hear more about those, and hopefully we can answer them.